A showdown is looming in the courts between the office of the Public Protector and opposition political parties, at least some. This after a report by the acting Public Protector, Advocate Gcaleka, found that President Cyril Ramaphosa did not violate the Executive Members Ethics Act in the Phala Phala farm scandal. Well, let's get some analysis now, and we're joined by Dr. Kagiso Pooe from the University of Witwatersrand, the School of Governance there. Dr. Pooe, thank you very much for your time. Let's begin with the saber rattling from the opposition benches, at least some of them, a good number of them, in fact, I should say. Are their actions justified when they say they actually want to take this report on judicial review?
No, morning, and thanks for having me, Mr. Kholeka. Yes, I think that correct that they're justified politically if you keep in mind that, look, 2024 is coming and that this has been a political capital for them. And also, I think on the ethical side of it, when you read the judgment of the acting PP, the logic which he followed, which is to say you can find the police, the security, I think the security establishment and an individual guilty, but you can't find the person who asked them to act on that. So I think even on that, they've got a case. So, yeah, I think it's quite justified. But the key will be how they argue it, because it's one thing simply to say, listen, let's argue this until 2024. I think the arguments have to be clear and they have to give a logic and a reasoning as to why they're doing it, so that it just doesn't come across as just politics.
Yeah, and I want to follow on that theme that you're saying that the political parties seem justified if you follow the logic of what that report has concluded. One of the parties, I think the Democratic Alliance, saying that this report read more like a job interview for Advocate Gcaleka instead of an investigative report. Do you take that to heart? Do you think that the DA is justified in what they're saying?
Well, look, I wouldn't play the individual. It's always important. There's a saying that play the ball, don't play the man or the woman in this case. I think they should maybe rather stick to the issue of saying, look, the logic and the reasoning behind the report, one. And two, and I think probably this is the most important part, just that law saying you can find Mr. Roda to have something to answer for. But Mr. Roda was only brought into this equation by the president. I think if they just stick to that, then it's enough. And thirdly, that we have to also remember there's another report that will be coming from the Reserve Bank, if I'm not mistaken, and SARS. And that really is something which I think they can also hold on to. Say, listen, while you might have given this report as flawed as we think it is on the politics and the ethics of it, it really would have made sense for you to also collaborate with those institutions and also the actual report that brought us to this position by the former constitutional judge to kind of integrate that, to say, listen, I might not have all the answers here, but on the side, because sometimes law, and I'm not an expert in law, it's about erring on the side of saying, if evidence were to go into this way, what are the ramifications? And I think a report doesn't do that. And I think if political parties play it in that way, us as citizens can also almost say, listen, keep up the good fight of accountability, because that we can get behind, as opposed to if you play the woman, and also if you just simply make this a partisan issue of saying, well, this is the ANC, let's just go for it.
Yeah. Dr. Pooe, I think the simpler the questions, perhaps the better the public is going to understand this. Do you think that Advocate Gcaleka and her team, in their release of this report, and exactly what you're saying, that the logic followed, it doesn't necessarily match up, has she painted herself into a political corner?
I would say yes, because as you're saying, the key thing, and we always ask this of public servants, is, listen, I know she's acting, and when you're acting, there's a syndrome in government that when you're acting, you always try to err on the side of being in the middle of the road. But we always ask this, just do your job in such a way that whether the superiors think that, look, you're totally out of the way, or whether those that are criticizing you have really got a case to answer or don't have a case to answer, you can sleep well at night. And I think what she sort of has done and her team has done is really put herself in the side of, she didn't err on the side of the middle. She kind of went to say, listen, the person is not guilty, and the logic did not follow from it. And I think she sort of has put herself in the crossroads of many political parties. But it's important that we remember it's her office, and that we should also just remember to keep in mind we must judge the office, and maybe also just ask questions about, listen, does this question of having acting for so long really make sense? Or maybe the PP, and this is not the first time the review of the office over the years has come to the fore, maybe we do need to kind of look at the state of the office and say, is the office in the best shape currently? And I'd argue that it's really not in the best shape currently.
And if we use this report, because political parties, opposition political parties, are obviously going to make a meal of it as we head to the elections, but yes, I understand we need to look at it in its entirety and say the office of the public protector, the image right now, or reputational damage, where are we in terms of that? But we can't ignore the fact that, as you rightly point out, we have an acting public protector who, in all probability, is going to be among the key contenders for the top job of being the public protector. Advocate Gcaleka, do you think that, or perhaps the question is, how big a test of credibility will this report be come those job interviews?
Well, I think I'll just make the simple scenario. You can imagine the leader of, I would say, the leader of the EFF at these interviews, and you can just imagine how much of a heyday he's going to have, because he can simply say, "But listen, when you've been given this authority, this is what you produce. Explain this to us using your legal framework, and also kind of almost justify that you have not taken a side and that we're not going to be basically back here in the next 2 or 3 years, as we currently are with the current, if we can call it that, the current PP in Parliament. Justify that, and this can go on for days and days." So I think she's really put herself in a bit of a pickle. But I would also hope that, listen, if we actually read the report, and maybe those that are more legally inclined can give us an answer to this, and it legally makes sense, she can then proudly say, listen, I really did follow a legal process. I did follow the rules of the book, and I came to this conclusion, and I can stand by this, and the legal fraternity can also stand with me. So we also have to give her that benefit of the doubt. But if she hasn't, I can tell that's going to be one of those job interviews where you wish you were somewhere else other than there.
Another massive point of another massive talking point here, Dr. Pooe, is the reports or the investigative reports that have yet to come out. The Reserve Bank is one institution that is still investigating. The Hawks are also investigating. Those two institutions, as and when they bring out their reports, and I'm sure she'll be praying that they, I think, follow the same sort of line with her to say the president is in the clear. If they don't, do we both agree, perhaps, that it will be a case closed for Advocate Gcaleka, thinking that she could occupy the office of the public protector?
Most definitely, it will be a case closed, but we also have to remember, it's always, with these things, you have to read the terms of reference. I think the reason why we're looking forward to the other two sides in particular is because I think their mandate is really to look at issues such as that, how money comes into the country, how it's accounted for. And I think that will probably be a better case to really look forward to. But Kholeka, I also want to raise something.
Oh. Dr. Pooe, are you still there? All right, I think he's frozen for the time being. Let me see if I can keep you interested while we try and have him reconnect. All right, I think he is back. You broke off for a little bit there. Let's start with the point that you wanted to raise specifically.
Yes, these things are legal reports, and I think we can respect them. But there is a question about ethics, which the president has not answered, which is to say, how is it that you, as our commander-in-chief and the head of the country, found yourself in this situation when it was brought onto your premises? And look, it's begun basically a whole circus that we're all having to account for. The president has still yet to give us, take us into his confidence. And I think that's the missing part, that he can be legally cleared. And I think we will respect that. And if you can, and as political parties are showing, if they can take it on review, they will, and that process has to be respected. But I think there's an ethical component the president has not answered, which is to say, how did you get yourself into this? And why are you not speaking to the citizens to explain to towards how you got yourself into this. Because you have to always remember, politics sometimes, yes, legally you can be cleared of things, but the currency of leadership is a good ethical basis. And it's not to say President Ramaphosa was the greatest candidate to be president, but what he came into the office with was to say, listen, I'm not like the previous guy, but if he's acting like the previous guy, I think he's got a case to answer ethically beyond these reports.
Yeah, ethical leadership. Perhaps he is found wanting there. In fact, I want to conclude the conversation on that very point. One report has come out to say you are in the clear, Mr. President, but there are others to follow. Can the president walk tall at a time like this and even go as far as to be the face of the ANC, as the Secretary General intimated here a little earlier in, I think, the previous week, to say the face of the leadership of the ANC come these elections is going to be President Cyril Ramaphosa. Can really the president walk tall?
Well, if you're speaking about the ANC of Tambo, Nelson Mandela and Thabo Mbeki, not so. If you're speaking about the ANC of President Zuma and President, I think Ramaphosa and Mr. Mbalula included, probably, because I mean that's a very low ethical base to really base anything on. So yeah, he can be the face, but the key question is to say which ANC. If it's a historical ANC of Mr. Tambo, Nelson Mandela and Thabo Mbeki, I think maybe they should be a bit humble in saying things like that. But if it's the ANC we've seen over the last decade, very easily so, because we all can have to admit that there is a very low ethical basis for leadership. I don't even call it leadership. I think people playing leadership in the ANC.
Dr. Kagiso, Pooe, let me thank you very much for your time and indeed your analysis. He is from the Wits School of Governance. Well,